Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Grow Individual Donations, presented by Sherry Quam Taylor and brought to you by Firespring. So before we jump into Sherry's content, really quick, I have a really small orientation for you about who Firespring is. First things first, my name is Julia Kerrigan. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Firespring. I started out on our website support team before I moved into the webinar world. So I have a really good idea about nonprofit websites, how we use them at Firespring, and the way that we build our system to work for nonprofits. And this has really helped me moving into the webinar field. As some of you know, most of our webinars revolve around websites and fundraising. So this is where that comes really in handy. Now, Firespring is located in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is where our headquarters are. Right now, we're all still working from home, and you might be as well, but this is where we're located, pretty central. We like to call it the middle of everywhere in the US. And if you're not familiar with us, Firespring is a company. We provide printing, marketing, and websites, as well as strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits across the world. Right now, I really focus on the websites. We've been in the website business for about 25 years, since the internet really started that way. And we currently help thousands of nonprofits across the world with their websites and getting them able to take in fundraising and host events online. So that's where we fit into this picture. And as a company, Firespring, we are a B Corporation. We were actually Nebraska's first B Corporation. And if you're not familiar, a B Corp is just a benefit corporation. So it's a designation for a business that commits themselves to being a force for social good. And that means that we are doing everything we can as a business to make the world a better place. And we get to sit in the company of other B Corps like Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, New Belgium Brewery, Clean Canteen, Warby Parker, just a few off the top of my head. So it's really at the heart of what Firespring does to give back to the community, and that's, I think, why we line up so much with nonprofits, because we try to. It's intentional. Our nonprofit websites and how we work there versus our culture as a company are one and the same. So we like to just do a quick orientation about who we are, so you know who is presenting this webinar to you. We know it matters a lot who you're in business with, and maybe even who you're attending a webinar from. So we just like to give that orientation really quick about who we are. But I would like to introduce Sherry Quam Taylor. She spends her time teaching leaders of small and mid-sized nonprofits how to shift from spending all their time, energy, and resources on low-dollar donor activities to those investment level opportunities that lead to larger donations. The people she works with are nonprofit leaders, excuse me, who are experts in their field, but when it comes to individual donor fundraising, they've simply never been trained on how to do it. So it feels uncomfortable and frustrating. She helps them learn the exact steps to have investment level asks that feel comfortable, involves less dread, and secures the largest gift of their careers. Sherry is headquartered in Chicagoland, but she teaches nonprofits nationally through her private coaching and her 90-day Let's Grow Fundraising Accelerator, excuse me. So I'm really thrilled to have Sherry here this morning with you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Sherry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is always one of my favorite groups to come and talk to. Here's the screen too. Does that look okay, Julia?
Yes, it does. Perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll get rolling here. So yeah, okay, so let's roll here. Thank you for having me. I'm gonna get my screen here dialed in so I can present well. Okay, here's what we're talking about today. We're talking about your funding model. And it's an interesting time we're in. That's probably the understatement of the day, right? Here's what I want to say. If you've realized during 2020 that perhaps your funding model has been way too dependent on one thing. So whether that's, gosh, we were too dependent on that event, or maybe you're a larger organization and you've been too dependent on government funds, program revenue, foundation revenue, whatever it is, you've needed a more diverse funding model. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how you can pivot into individual gifts. So what we're going to go through today is I want to talk about how to diversify your funding, by using your two secret weapons. That's your overhead and your budget. Two of my favorite topics. And as Julia said, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know I've been on my soapbox about overhead during all of this COVID stuff. So hop over and follow me if you want to hear about that. I want to also talk about what you should be doing right now to build a stronger future of funding. How can we look ahead and see a better future of funding for you past 2020? And then I also want to share with you some encouragement and really share what some organizations were doing really well in 2019 that actually positioned them to be really strong in 2020. And so I want you to be inspired, and I want you also to learn from these organizations today. So I'm going to share a couple case studies as well. So this all starts back in 2010. So I'm going to give you a quick flyover of my own journey and my own story, and then I'm also going to move into a case study of my client, Trey. And so in 2010, which, gosh, it feels like only a couple of years ago, but it's obviously a full decade ago, that wasn't also our best year, right? I mean, that followed 2008, 2009, when, housing was sideways, unemployment was crazy. Those were not our best years too. That was actually the year I left my corporate position and joined a nonprofit that I was super passionate about. And so I've been thinking back about this time quite a bit these days because there's a lot of similarities, I guess I'll say, and I'll share some of that. And so we really have to look at different times and what organizations' response was during other times that we've struggled. So I left my corporate career. I joined a nonprofit that I was super passionate about, where I had no network and very few connections. Now, I wasn't lacking on passion or vision. I was on fire about this organization, and I needed everybody to get on my train and join me in this journey. The problem was we were not short of passion and vision, but we needed more money and we needed larger donations. The problem was I didn't know how to do that because I never needed to know how to do that in my previous career. I didn't have a degree in nonprofit, right? And so this was also the time, which maybe you're also hearing this right now. Everybody said to us, individuals can't give right now. Be careful, right? This is not the time. And so we simply needed more money. Now, here's where I started as I think back on this, and I've thought back on it so many times. I really dug deep into what does it take to fully fund an organization. And what I mean by that is to have enough money to do everything we want to do and be strong, right? And so as I researched this and really obviously realized we needed a large number of unrestricted mid and major level gifts. And as I started to research this, I probably in hindsight felt like, well, I've never been a nonprofit before. And so I felt that was a bit of a disadvantage. But I have to tell you, looking back, I realized that total beginner's mindset was a complete gift that had been given to me. And here's what I mean by that. If you've been on my webinars before, you know I always share this statistic because I am here to shatter these statistics, and you are too. So 70% of nonprofits are under $1 million, right? And 91% are under $5 million. But here's what didn't add up for me when I back then, and still doesn't now. I know the amazing work that organizations are doing who are under that $5 million mark. I think I know what you've been doing these last few months, how you've sacrificed, how you've led, how you've just knocked it out of the park. So this concept of that nonprofits can do more with less, I don't buy into it. None of that made sense to me back then. It sure as heck doesn't make sense to me right now. And so even back then, we did things differently. We embraced risk, right? We tried new things. We spent money on things that helped us make money, right? We didn't subscribe to that traditional fear of the percentages, right, that we all face here and there. And we weren't too heavily dependent or overly dependent on volunteers, right? We paid for good people. And so, there was lots of bad advice we got during the time, right? A lot of, hold on, let's be cautious, right? And so, things like that are really crazy of, donors don't want to give if you have too much money in the bank. Be careful, don't have too big a reserve, right? Or their donors aren't going to pay for salaries. Hold on, we got to find a project. Or have the biggest event in the community and have it be amazing and have it be like the end all be all. See if you can get everything for free, right? None of that kind of stuff added up. And so I didn't take that advice. We pushed against that advice, and the organization tripled its funding in 18 months. So I tell you that because I want you to hear me. The number one thing that keeps nonprofits from being funded, to break past that pie chart I showed you with those percentages, is believing in these misconceptions. And then trying to figure out and try to fit into that framework that is not setting you up for success. And so join me today, I'm inviting you in this, as we push through some of these concepts that are actually keeping you from raising more funds from individuals, okay? So let's jump into those secret weapons I was talking about. First one is overhead. Overhead, embrace it, get used to it. It's not a bad word. I love it. I love overhead. Here's what I mean by that. You must, if you're going to grow your programs and mission, right, of course, but if you also want to raise more money, you have to invest time and money on all three areas of your nonprofit, right? Your programs, your admin, and your fundraising. You know those from your blessed 990, right? So there are going to be years when your fundraising is 20%. Might be this year. There are going to be years when you're investing in the organization and your admin is 20%. And there's going to be years where your programs are only 70%. I don't know, there might be a year where it's 90. Don't let the percentages and we can't do that, so throw our percentages off. Don't let that drive your organization. That's going to keep you from growing. So here's what I mean when investing in all three areas of your organization. And then hold tight, I'm going to show you how this impacts your individual fundraising. So this is the easy one, right? When we're approaching your budget, what should I put? What am I not putting in my budget? What do I want to do that actually will propel my programs to the next level? That's usually the easier one. From the admin perspective, what infrastructure do I need to invest in to make sure, obviously, my ops can sustain this program growth? And then from a fundraising perspective, my favorite topic, what do I need to spend money on that helps me raise more money, right? So I can actually do the above. So it cannot just be, my board wants to put as much into programs this year as possible. I hear you. But if you invest in all three, eventually you'll be able to put more money into programs. So when you don't invest in all three areas, when we don't have a plan to grow all three, it really does leave you vulnerable to a funding plateau. It leaves you in that part of the pie that I just shared with you. It also leaves you landlocked when opportunities come your way. Oh, we'd love to do that. We have a waiting list. We'd love to move into a second city. I don't feel like we have enough money in the bank to risk that, right? And then we can't take advantage of opportunities. And lastly, and perhaps you felt this in 2020, when we haven't been in a pattern of investing and growing our organization, it leaves us vulnerable in times of crisis, right? And so many of us have felt that during this time. I just hung up with somebody this morning who had to stop taking a salary, right? Because there wasn't enough investment happening before we went into 2020. And so I want to share with you a case study of my student Trey, who's a great student, in hopes to inspire you and show you how by doing this, he actually positioned himself really well during 2020. Let's learn from him, and I'm gonna point out a few things. So a couple uphill challenges here when I started working with Trey. And so they were way too dependent on one large donor. and they lost a lead gift, not at a fault of their own, issues out of their control, over 20% of their budget, right? That hurt, right? The organization had a history of spending way too much on programs, right? Like it's got to be 90 plus, not investing in fundraising and admin to support the growth. Challenge 3, which is also an opportunity, he had quite a few donors that were giving, but we kind of realized they weren't giving their best gift to the organization, right? And so it didn't feel good because there was money left on the table. And Trey is a pastor by training, and so he's super relational, great at what he does, but he was kind of guessing when it came to individual fundraising. And so I remember him saying to me, I kind of don't know what I don't know, right? And so I'm kind of trying things, but I think I could be more strategic, and I think I could be kind of getting some of that money that I feel like is left on the table. Now, this was Trey's organization when they lost the large gift. It had sent them on a trajectory that nobody on this call wants to see, this being the growth line or lack of thereof for the organization, right? And so this was needless to say, not a good thing. Let me share with you. Within 90 days of really pivoting and shifting into some new activities, Trey had a real development plan and actually had the tools to replace and then exceed the money that they'd lost. He was starting to secure his large gifts, and today he attributes raising 25% more over last year to what he learned today. So if we ever work together and you text me good news, I always say, oh good, this is going to be on my next webinar. And so Trey's on my webinar today. So when I get texts like this, I'm celebrating. So let me share with you what exactly went on here. So this arrow represents Trey and his team and board realizing that they've got to invest in overhead. They've got to invest differently in the organization that helps them raise more money. And so that thing that's like probably right there in the back of your ear that we hear so often of, but we want to put as much money into programs every year, that doesn't add up, because now that the organization is investing more in admin and fundraising, where can they put more money? They can put more money into programs. So because of this, Trey's really moving to a way higher monthly average of individual giving. He felt the freedom and had the clarity of mind, I might also add, to invest in overhead, right? So he still hired staff and actually grew the organization. And today he's securing very regular gifts, 5-figure gifts. More importantly, he knows how to attract individual donors, and how to lead them to their best gift. And maybe most importantly, how to ask for what he needs. Okay, let's build on this. I want to build on this with your second secret weapon, your budget. I love talking budget when we got on here to talk about fundraising, but I'm gonna land this plane. Your budget and your need are two different things. What do I mean by that? So in general, if you're writing anything down today, this might be it. There is a huge mindset shift that you have to take when you start doing your fundraising planning for the year, right? And then I'm going to say your budgeting too. So I want you to move from, well, yeah, Sherry, if we had the money, I would hire another staff person and I would do X and we would grow, we would take advantage of XYZ. I want you to shift to, here's what we need. Here's what we need this year to accomplish our mission. Your budget and your need are two different things. And I'm going to tell you right now, I say 99%. I kind of want to say 100, if I can be honest with you. 99% of nonprofits are not fully funded because of their approach to planning and budgeting. Because if you are not figuring out what your budgeted need is, the number you need to be raising toward, how will you put a development plan in place to then hit that need, right? Otherwise, it's always, well, we hope to hit this. Let's hope to raise that, right? Raise to your need. What do I mean by that? So I want to ask you today, what have you not factored into your budget that might be keeping you from growing? things like technology, maybe it's your brand look and feel, maybe you haven't updated it for 20 years, maybe it's your website that Julia was talking about earlier. Is it donor management software? Is it, gosh, we need to move from our volunteer bookkeeper to really establishing financial processes so I know my numbers? Is it salary? Is it living wage? Whatever it is. Maybe it's, one right now, people that are reaching out, I'll just mention is, I have so many groups reaching out right now who are multi-million-dollar organizations, but they've been too dependent on government funds. And so they're bringing in only a little bit of charitable giving. And so even if you don't get that government contract this year, you still want to do that. You still want to have that be part of your mission, right? And so you need to put that in your budget. Reserve fund. This is a huge for this year, right? Before COVID, I would have said, probably 3 to 4 months, I would say reserve fund. That hasn't gotten us through, right? We've got to budget, 6 months, 9 months. People are saying 12 months, right? What have you not put in your budget that's keeping you from growing? Because here's the thing, it is only when you've created a real and true needs-based budget, really the number you need, right? I'm not talking holiday wish list, tripling it, but I'm talking about what you need to do and accomplish your mission. Is only then you can actually put a real fundraising plan in place that will hit that, right? And so this simple, I think it's very practical, but this practical approach is a game changer. So when you do this right, when you budget correctly, when you move from that squeak by, we hope we get funded, or we hope we could reach 2 million this year, we hope. And when you create a real budget that reflects your real needs, it helps you raise more money for programs, admin, and fundraising. Yes, those salaries, and yes, that office space, and yes, that copy machine, all of it. It helps you build a reserve, and I should say cash balance too. You've needed money in the bank, right? It also helps you reduce your dependence on restricted gifts, right? Because now we know how to attract the types of donors that will give unrestricted gifts. So here's what I want you to do. I love getting people let's get thinking about this right now. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think for a second here. Let's do a quick exercise. I'm going to talk expense size on the left, and then we're going to talk income on the right. I'm going to show you how this is not so scary when sometimes it's oh, we can't put that in the budget. Oh, board won't let me do that. Let me show you. So expense side, well, if we had the money, here's what we do, right? So think about things like, I don't know, would you hire that staff member that maybe they stepped away last year and you never filled the position, right? Maybe you would frankly serve more people like I've been talking about. Maybe your reserve fund has been depleted and you're looking at your budget saying we've got to rebuild that. Maybe it's an infrastructure thing, an office thing, or I don't know what, website, something. Are you taking a living wage salary? 55% of executive directors that come to me are not taking their board approved salary. We got to fix that. We got to fix that in the budget. In the budget it goes. So be thinking about what are those things that, gosh, that would help me grow, or gosh, that would make me stronger. Now that's on the expense side. So, I'm notorious for raising budgets, but here's why. Because there's usually money sitting there on the income side to balance it. But sometimes it's hard for you to see, but I can see it sitting there. So let me give you some ideas. So here's what we need to accomplish our mission. So where are you maybe leaving money on the table? And so who is giving to you, but maybe kind of just mailing in that check every year and it's not their best gift, right? That person that mails in a check, what I just said, it's very reactive. Did you have an event every year and maybe those you're realizing were just event donors and we've got to migrate them into annual fund donors? So who are those donors that came and if they understood your need, they really loved what you did, but they didn't totally understand what you needed them to do because perhaps you just asked them to buy an auction item and they didn't understand that you also needed them to write a $1,000 check, $2,000 check. Are there businesses who are kind of just used to you coming and asking for a transactional sponsorship? Will you sponsor X? Maybe they're interested in supporting your mission, right? And lastly, are there large donors that you simply haven't solicited yet? You have to ask. Asks for large donors are not appeals. They're not emails. They're rarely events, right? Are you sitting down and soliciting your donors one-on-one? So I like to show both sides of this because I want you to see that investing from an expense side maybe feels a little scary, but there's just as much money hanging out there, if you will, to balance it. But we have to figure out how to do that. So we're going to talk about that today. So here's the thing. Most people think for me to move into individual gifts, for me to really launch that, that campaign or that, I'll say like a mid and major level gift program, it's like, well, we have to have the right board, or we have to have somebody really influential that endorses us, or like Oprah's got to reach out, or whoever it is, or that we've got to be spending 90% on programs. We've got to have this right secret sauce and formula for individuals to find us and give. That is not true. It's not true. The one thing that larger donors need from you, investment level donors, is information. They're dying for information. They're dying for you to sit down with them and share with them what their gift can do, what it looks like to be a stakeholder in the organization, and to clarify what you need. Okay, so this is exactly what Trey did, and this is what you can learn how to do today, and I'm going to pivot into that right now. So number one, he learned to create a financial plan and budget that actually attracted large donors. One of the top 3 questions I get, Sherry, how do I find donors? I know what you're asking. We can do that. That's easy. Are you attracting them? Are you talking in a way that says, I'm going to invest in them? Yep, that's a good investment for my money, right? These are business level people, right? Who are these individuals that are giving? He learned what to spend his time on that leads to larger donors to give larger gifts. And maybe best of all, he didn't have to rely on his gut. He actually knew how to make an ask. It's not so scary, right? And he knew how to lead a donor to a yes, okay? So hear this as we head into this next section of some really significant fundraising strategies that you can start using today. If you're going to secure and find investment level gifts from individuals, we're talking individuals now today, you have to be able to share the need of the organization. You have to be able to move into a financial conversation, business person to business person, right? And anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. I know if you're listening and you're running an organization, if you're the development director, executive director, you're a teacher, lawyer, pastor, doctor, social worker, you got this. You got this. I'm going to show you how. So here's what this changes. All of this pre-work, right? Like, I guess I'll call it, shifting from if we have the money, we do this to here's all we need, right? Listen to this. Listen to how I say this. But let's say the donor says, so, okay, Sherry, so what do you need? Like, sounds great. What do you need this year? The difference is, well, we'd love to be able to hit $1 million this year because we want to do this and we want to do this, right? Thank you so much for asking. This year, we have a $1.2 million need. Could I share with you what that looks like? And then if I actually did that, which one of those feels like the better investment? Which one of those feels like the money's going to be used well? Like, I think you know which one. So here's what I want to say for context. So Julia told you, so I teach people how to be less dependent on like the one big thing and really help them diversify their funding model. And so I do this through my 90-day accelerator. It's actually been really fun, if I can say that, to teach all over the country and to talk to people all over the country during 2020. Here's why I tell you this today, right in the middle of this presentation. The last 30 days are the ask. How do I do it? What are the questions? What do I use? What do I have in my hand? What if they ask me this? All those things. You can get over that. That's easy. The first 60 days are getting investment level ready. Way more of finding individual donors, securing more individual donors. Way more has to do with how you're coming to the table and how you're in that growth mindset and how you're presenting your budget and how you're really making sure a donor understands what their gift will do. It's always a surprise to people. So I want to talk about 5 concepts that really you can start today, I guess, to move into a stronger future of funding for your organization, because you've never deserved it more. You've never deserved it more. So let's talk ROI here. Okay, so here's what I want to say. Most organizations tend to spend too much of their budget and energy and time on efforts that actually attract smaller donors and actually then yield small gifts. But only about 7% of annual revenue comes from small gifts. And then if you look on the flip side, on average, about 70% of nonprofit revenue comes from the smallest, that top part of the pyramid of your donor base. And so this is such a core principle. I get so excited talking about this. What does this data tell us? It tells us that our fundraising model must be rooted in ROI. What do I mean by that? And so this is what I've been watching all through COVID. If you had this model going into COVID, you're standing pretty strong right now. You are, right? If you didn't and we're starting it, you can start it. You can start it, but it's perhaps been a little rougher. Okay, so here's the funding model I want you to point your compass at. Money's on the right, your annual revenue, time and budget, how you're spending your time, because I know time is of the essence, right? So I want your top 10 donors yielding between 25 and 40% of your revenue. And I want your top 30 donors yielding between 50 and 75% of your revenue. I want that a nice breadth of gifts, not too dependent on one thing. Here comes the challenge. If, and it can, and it does, studies show, most of your revenue comes from this top part. We have to make sure that you're not spending the majority of your time and budget on this bottom part of the pyramid, right? That's where we always default. Because here's the thing, your time is the organization's most valuable asset. Don't be humble about this. If you're the leader, if you're the fundraiser, every hour you spend fundraising has to be a high ROI. It has to yield and has to be pointed at the top part of that pyramid, or you will never, ever be fully funded. And so it's usually a little bit more of a math problem, right? Looking at the staff, the leadership, and the board, and making sure that the activities they're doing really align and then yield the largest gifts for the organization. And so an example of what not to do would be, when I go into board meetings sometimes and the whole discussion is, what auction items should we have at the event, or who can get X gift cards? But those are gifts down in the bottom of the pyramid. No, we don't talk about that at the board level. I need the board up on the top part of the pyramid, right? And so your takeaway in this section would be, I want you to prioritize your time on the activities that lead to those top 30 gifts, on the activities that build the pipeline for those top 30 gifts. Because if it could yield up to 75% of your funding, frankly, even 50% of your funding, isn't it that important? It is that important. Okay, so run that number, when you get back to your desk today. Now, let's talk about this concept of quick fix is a lie. Now, here's the problem. I'm going back to the bottom part of the pyramid. A lot, and there's so much content out there right now, right? There's a lot of content and resources that will tell you that this is actually pretty easy. Like, you just do this, you have the appeal, you go online, you go virtual, you do blah, and the money will flow, right? I'm being a little sarcastic here. But I always say, if someone is telling you fundraising is easy and you just got to do this and you just got to say this, you need to pivot and turn and walk the other way, because it's not. And I don't mean that to discourage you. I want you to be realistic. If you want to grow your individual gifts, your mid and major level gifts, you want an individual to write you a personal $50,000 check, that's going to take a while. It's not a quick fix, right? That is a personal check. And so oftentimes we see these types of activities happening. Oh, we'll have an event, we'll do a thing, we'll have an appeal, we'll do the year-end whatever. We kind of hope it's true. I wish it was true too, right? But the thing is, it leads us on this path of defaulting to more of the transactional activities that we do see other groups doing, and it feels like they're having success with, right? And so, you know, the too heavily loaded with events, too heavily loaded, you know, with appeals, too heavily loaded with, you know, Amazon Smile, whatever, like too much on these transactional activities. And it's actually keeping larger donors from understanding what you need and what you really need them to do. And so if we go back to my little triangle here, or a pyramid, I should say, and we look at your annual revenue, if you're going to grow, I want these gifts, let me just say all 30 and probably all 50. I want them rooted in deep, deep relationships, and I want them unrestricted. If I have my way, I want them unrestricted too, right? Now, I want these coming from this concept I call single source decision makers, right? I want to be able to pick up the phone and call Chris and Sue and have a conversation with them. People whose funding models were focused on single source decision makers before 2020 could pick up the phone and call those people, right? It's challenging. The opposite of that would be, great, we'll apply and we hope that all 30 people will vote yes and then we'll get the funding, right? So this usually means individuals, private family foundations where you actually can have access to the decision makers at the smaller group, and oftentimes private businesses, the owner of the business. I will also say to you, this is where I see the most money left on the table. Because this feels mysterious. This feels like, what am I going to say to those people? To kind of just, what am I going to give them, right? Your mission is worthy of being supported. And what if they want to say yes and they don't know how to help you? So it feels easier to do the application, make the levels and mail it in, right? Let's see if they bite, right? That feels easier. That transaction feels easier. Start today. Prioritize your time on building relationships with that single source decision maker. You know, sometimes I'll even tell people, I don't know, make a field in your donor management software and track that. Like, are we spending the majority of our relationship building time with the decision makers? It's always a good report to run. Okay, let's talk about investment level leading. And so leading is really the key word in this line. So again, if you've been on any of my webinars, I'm giving you some of my really core principles here. We have to get clear on two things. Your goal is to lead your donors to give their best gift to you and then help them give that gift every year. Imagine right now if every donor in your donor file was giving their best gift. It'd be crazy. It'd be crazy. If they all understood what it meant to give their best gift, it'd be, I don't know, would it be triple? I don't know what it would be. It would be wild. And then we want them to give that gift every year. So here's the thing. To secure a donor's best gift, you on this call, you have to lead them through, I'm going to say like an investment level conversation, but also a relationship building strategy, right? That helps them say yes. You've got to help and lead them to that and bring them into such deep understanding. We got to go way deeper with individuals than we do with a foundation or someone else, right? And so I'm in this, I love the methodology of really thinking about what is the donor experience I need to serve? What is the donor experience I need to design that will actually, when I do lead them to an ask, I'm pretty sure they're going to say yes, right? And that leads them to making the best decision for the organization and for the mission, right? And so I could talk an hour about this slide, and I do that sometimes, not today. The reason I show you this is when we're talking about your high level donors and we say, okay, we're going to ask Chris and Sue in November for $25,000 this year. Last year they gave 10. What am I going to do in January? What am I going to do in March? What am I going to do in June? What am I going to do in September? So that I can ask them, right? So I want you to hear this today. These steps, moving from reactive to proactive in a kind, warm, and wonderful way, not pushy, not salesy, not used car salesman, you have way more control of the pacing of the gifts and the size of the gifts than you think. You got to learn how to lead the donor, right? Lead them. This kind of graphic, I guess, represents an annual year. Little nugget, we won't go into this today, but I'm going to tell this to you because it's so important. That last circle, how you thank them, how you respond to the gift, how you knock their socks off. That's how you get your second gift. That's how we get them back in the pattern for next year. That's how we lead donors to giving a gift every year. So when somebody says to me, I don't know, that donor, they gave $5,000, we just never heard from them again. I go straight to the thank you. How did you respond? And then how did you report back to them after that, right? How did you lead them to their next gift? So I want you to hear me today. For your higher level donors, you have to make strategic chess moves to the ask. You have to lead them on a journey to their yes, right? Now, one other thing I want to say here is with your board members, oftentimes I hear, okay, board members say they don't know anybody, they don't want to fundraise, they don't want to ask, I'm afraid. Typically, it's because a board member also doesn't totally know what this whole fundraising thing is. And it's more that the whole process needs to be demystified. So the best way to do that is actually design a great experience for your board member. Solicit them, right? Solicit each board member. Even if you have a give-get, I want them giving their best gift. That give-get is rarely their best gift. FYI, you know this. Show them how it's done. Model it to them. Best advice I can give you. I have boards giving triple within a year when this is done. Okay, number 4, don't settle. Do not settle, especially during COVID. Do not settle. Don't settle going forward. Here's what I mean. I see so much money left on the table when you decide what size gift your donor can give, right? Or you say, oh, no, I don't have that network. My network wouldn't give that. Do you have access to their bank account? Like, what do we know that you don't, right? Or what do you know that we don't, I should say. So things like this, listen to this. Do you hear people saying this? Well, at least I get them to give 5,000, right? Let's kind of not offend them right now. Or, I think they can give 20. Like, I know they gave 20 to this group down the road, but I don't know. It's COVID right now. 2020 is rough. So let's just ask them for 10K. Those types of things are you deciding for the donor. So if you're tempted, or maybe you're even doing that, you have to look what's really, really behind that. You don't have to decide the size of the gift. You don't get to decide the size of the gift. What's behind that? And so if you do not commit to sharing the financial need, that's why I started there, what you need. You don't commit to sharing the financial need and then actually ask for that need and share that need. It's typically a symptom of something bigger. And so oftentimes it can really mean that you're just not confident in what you're sharing, or am I really even doing it right? Sometimes it's a pipeline issue where your organization has so few prospective larger donors that oh my gosh, just get it in, just get the 10K in because we got to do payroll, right? And then it could also mean there's just you're very highly uncomfortable with asking. And so you'll undersell your mission for far less than its impact. And no one wants to do that. No one wants you doing that these days. So I want you to release the pressure right now off the shoulders, release the pressure of you finding the major donors, right? I got to go find major donors, right? You will attract them doing the things we've talked about today, but you'll also, I want to tell you, there's also major donors and mid-level donors, super important too, sitting right under your nose. But oftentimes because we have made the financial decision for them, we never ask or they never find us, right? So make this shift. Your mission, again, is worthy of being supported. And my goodness, it is worthy of being supported in 2020. So don't make that decision for the donor. They want to support you, okay? Last but not least, learning is not a risky investment. Like if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that like the past couple months, I've been talking about like what feels risky and kind of keeps us from growing. But then, there's calculated risks and things we need to embrace because we're growing and scaling businesses, right? And so even for me personally, my own business, there's a level of risk that I'm willing to embrace because I want to grow my business. And so here's what I want you to hear today as leaders of organizations, whether you're the ED, DD, or a board member. You're amazing. You are probably an expert at your mission and your programs. You're, a subject matter expert, but you still may struggle with leading large donors like through an investment level conversation, right? And hey, it's not your fault. Like, you went to school for something else, or you didn't ever need to know how to do this in your past career, right? And so the most important thing you can do is learn how to do that. Learn how to have these conversations with larger donors and lead them through an investment level conversation. So oftentimes, when people come to me and say, "Oh, I hate Sherry. Oh my gosh, I hate fundraising. I hate that. If I just didn't have to fundraise, my job would be perfect, right? Or I don't like asking people for money, or my board doesn't know they're supposed to fundraise, right?" When I hear all of these things, maybe you've said them before. I probably said them, a decade ago too. It typically means that something about the fundraising process feels like a mystery. I don't, like Trey said, I kind of don't know what I don't know. So like, I'm just kind of trying all the things. You're not sure what to say. You're not sure what does an investment level like conversation looks like, or perhaps because you haven't done it yourself. It's like, I actually don't know how to lead and manage up on my board to help them know how to do this so that they can be helping me with that top part of the pyramid too, right? So I want you, other case study, I told you I'd share with you a couple today. I want to share with you Sandy, one of my favorite students. Here was her situation. Here's what we can learn from her. So her organization, her donors didn't really totally understand her, how she was funded or what, that they needed money because there was a very high dependence on program revenue. Not a bad thing, but it confused donors. It was like, oh, great model. So glad people are paying for things, right? But not so quick. Sandy wanted to grow and move into a second city, but she never felt like she had enough money in the bank where she could like take that risk, right? And actually serve more people that she wanted to serve. Sandy is a rock star at her mission, but she's like, I don't know. I've never asked people for money. I know there's money there, but I don't know how to get it. And so she just lacked confidence, even though she is so well spoken about her mission. But it kept her from actually having investment level conversations. And it actually also kept her from making asks. And so she was really dependent on a fall gala, a fall event, for dependent that people would come and like, okay, phew, we got our charitable funding this year from the fall event, right? And so like, what happens when the fall event goes away? We all know what that feels like right now. So when I talked to Sandy in February, before the world turned sideways, she said to me, and she felt weird. She said, I feel weird because I have so much money in the bank right now. I have never had this money in the bank. I'm gonna tell you why. And so in March, when I talked to her, we were saying, I am so thankful I have so much money in the bank. So she took the program, I should say that she learned how to design her budget to her need, lead donors to asking for her need. So she grew overall in revenue by about 70% in 2019. So she was strong going into 2020. Now, here's what I really want you to see today. So before, she's about 50-50, right? About 50% of her money coming in from programs, about 50% coming in from donations. by 2019, she had tipped that scale over a little bit. And so 57% was coming from donations. Okay, so that seems like a good number, Sherry. What does that equate to? Well, it was over $200,000. And that meant the world heading into 2020. So I want you to see that, because sometimes I think we're overwhelmed by like, oh, I got to do this giant thing. Do you see how just that a little bit of a shift made a game changer difference? And so her learning how to point her compass at the top part of the pyramid, what did it do for her, right? Well, she has the largest reserve fund going into 2020. She actually still replicated her program in 2020. She's not frontline, people. She's not. But she had the money to do it, right? It reduced, and she continues to today, reducing her dependence on her program revenue, right? And therefore has more flexibility of funding by growing her charitable revenue from donors. It highly reduced her dependence on her event. We had no idea how important this would be in 2020, right? And so we actually pulled in 2019 a lot of her event donors' asks out of the event. And those event donors actually became annual fund donors. And so they will give again because their gift wasn't tied to an event. So I would have asked any one of you here today in February, I would have said, hey, if your event goes away, are those donors still going to give? And that was a totally hypothetical question, before mid-March, right? And so we're feeling that right now. And so it is key for us to remove any large donors' gifts from an event and pull them out separately and create an amazing donor experience for them. So when you do this right, all of these things I've talked about today, I know I've talked about a lot. I really wanted to throw a lot of good information on you today. When you do it right, you can fully fund your organization, your program, your app, and your fundraising. You can become less dependent on restricted gifts, right? Sometimes, like, it's sad right now when people call and like, we have money in the bank, but it's all restricted to this, and so I can't use it. I can't pay my staff, right? When you do this right, your time, which is so valuable, it aligns with investment level gifts, and you have a really high ROI. Your board can have a high ROI, and their activities are tied to helping you raise these funds. You really can move into a sustainable funding model. And so I want you to think about the things you can stop doing and replace them with the things you can start doing that really does reduce your dependence on some of these riskier funding models. And so the best investment you can make is to really align your time, learn how to move into larger unrestricted gifts from those single source decision makers. So align your overhead dollars with the skills, with the activities that attract your larger donors. I just want to say, I've been saying this on all the webinars I've been doing. Thank you for how you've served the nation, the country, your state, your community. Thank you how you've served during this time, because you've never needed, or you've never deserved more, I should say that. And we have never needed you more. And so thank you for how you've done that. As we move into Q&A, if you want to talk, I do private coaching. I've mentioned the 90-day program. My students have been exceptionally strong in 2020. And so if you feel like reaching out at your own schedule, please do. I call my 90-day accelerator Let's Grow. And you can go to my website, quamtaylor.com, Let's Grow. Please always mention FireSpring. I was telling Julia, I have so many FireSpring people reach out, and I love talking to FireSpring people. Please mention FireSpring, because always as a thank you to Julia and her team, I always throw in tons of bonuses, because I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to speak and teach you today. Okay, so I'm gonna, Julia, maybe you'll help me with some questions here, or if anything came in while we were talking about, but we do have a couple minutes left. I'd love to answer any questions that people might have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry. I am just going to kind of run down the list here. We have a few that came in, so we may go a minute or two over, but we also may just have to follow up with people.
I can follow up as well. If somebody really has something, pressing, like, just shoot me an email, or, you can let me know, Julia.
Absolutely. Okay, so the first question that came in was from Marcia. She says, With many of their donors giving in early 2020, what are some other ways that we can keep them engaged to give additional donations as the year progresses?
So good. So Marcia, I would say that the biggest thing, like I like to tell people, hey, we'll circle back with you in 90 days to share with you what your gift is doing. I'm so excited to do that. What does that do? It gives you the excuse to contact them. So I would pick 5 today and reach out to them and say, hey, I just wanted to hop on the phone with you for 10 minutes. I just want to share with you what your gift has been doing. It has really been a tremendous last couple of months. How is Friday at 10? And literally only take 10 minutes of their time, right? I cannot stress how important the thanking is. And so then have the 10-minute phone call with them. Tell them what you're going to do next. Lead the donor. That's just what I wanted to share with you today, Marcia. I'll keep you posted just as we, head into this back to school time. I'll keep you posted. Great. Is that okay? Great. So tell them what you're going to do next. That leaves the door open for you to reach back out and then perhaps share some opportunities, share some needs. But like sometimes it's a struggle of like, how do I get back in front of them? So always, I would say overthink would be my response to Marcia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sherry. And
Yeah.
this one here, she says, great reminders of importance of personal outreach. She's the ED of a small 3-person nonprofit, but I have social anxiety and really struggle to call donors and arrange personal meetings. Any tips on overcoming this?
Yeah, so there's a lot of mindset work I do with people when it feels fearful. Now, here's the thing. We have to move you from I'm asking for money to like, this is a really awesome and amazing opportunity you're giving this donor to invest in a mission. So I would have you just first check, are you feeling like you're asking them to give to you? Money's not going to you. Frankly, the money's not going to your organization. The money is going to your mission. And again, I've said it 4 times, your mission is worthy of being supported. So you are really the vehicle for a donor to give to the mission. You're just holding the charitable assets and distributing them. So sometimes that's a big mindset shift to make for people, especially founders, when you're like, yeah, they are giving to me. Like it's my blood, sweat, and tears, right? They are giving to your mission. And so when you call someone, like try to get in that frame of mind of like, oh, they're giving to our mission. And just so happens to be that you are the steward of those funds. So that's a quick answer. I'd want to dig, a lot deeper, but try to shift into that mindset because it really is a game changer.
Yeah, that's great advice, Sherry. Thank you so much. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we'll take one more question just
Okay.
since we're right about time. And then for everyone else, we will follow up with you. I'll send all these
Yeah.
questions to Sherry. And then be on the lookout in your inbox today for the materials from this webinar and some more information from us. So this question came in, Sherry. It says, do you have any tips on how to prospect for major donors that are new? We're a new organization with very few small donors who then upgrade to major, but they're not exactly sure how to find these brand new major donors.
Yeah. So typically what I do is I run just as robust of a connection strategy along with, wanting my donors to up their gifts, right? When we're prospecting. And so I want to be having just as many conversations with anybody, frankly, who will listen to me to be able to lead them through an understanding of here clarifying what the organization does, clarifying what the financial need is, and then literally asking that person who they know that would be interested in hearing what I shared with you today, and then also has the ability to make gifts of this level. And so sometimes I will tell people, who are kind of, well, you're not saying this, but like afraid to either like go talk to donors or are trying to find new donors. I'll say, who are the 5 most connected people you know? Your spouse needs a job. Let me call Rebecca. Hold on. She knows everybody. That is where you start. That is where you start. So you have to be educators above all and clarifiers of your need and why you need the funds and who you're looking for so much more than you think. And so your current donors, that's a great way to go back in and say, I'm not here to ask you for a thing today, but I'd love to ask you who are one or two other people that perhaps you could facilitate an introduction to. So that is a huge part of it. It takes time, but it's got to be continual. And really, that's just building the pipeline, right?
So good. Thank you so much, Sherry.
You bet.
Okay, well, that's all the questions we'll take for today, just to kind of keep on time. On behalf of us here at Firespring, I just want to say thank you all so much to all of you who joined us today. We had a great turnout, and especially thank you to Sherry, one of the greatest presenters I've seen, and we are just so happy to have you on with Firespring, presenting all of this content to everyone that was on today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Check out our calendar at firespring.com/webinars. That's where we list them out about a month in advance. There will be more by us at Firespring, and there will obviously be more by Sherry here coming soon. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.